In this video, we're going to take a look at how democracy works in South Africa, how their government's set up, and how their constitution is set up. And here is their parliament as it stands today. The Government of National Unity, which is kind of the interim in-between government as they develop their new government. And so it's the transition from apartheid to full democracy. They have a couple of years in between. The ANC wins a clear victory in the election of '94, but any party with at least 5% of the votes are going to be part of this coalition government. And so this Government of National Unity will include 21 representatives according to how many votes they got. And so the ANC is a clear victor with 12 seats in this new government, 6 National Party members, and 3 from the Inkatha. The leadership will include Mandela as president, because they got the clear majority there. F.W. de Klerk will be the deputy president, which is kind of the vice president. Thabo Mbeki will be the deputy president as well. And then finally Buthelezi will be Minister of Home Affairs. The Government of National Unity, their job is to change South Africa from apartheid to a multiracial democracy. And so they're going to change the makeup of the country a little bit. And so this is what the country looked like before. It's only just got a few states with a whole bunch of homelands. And so it's not really proportional. We've got this giant Cape state, a couple states over here and there, and then the homelands mixed in between. So they're going to redraw the map into this. And so the homelands will be incorporated into 9 new provinces or states. They'll also have new local, provincial, and national government structures established in each of these states. And so they're redrawing the map completely to incorporate and include all the different homelands. Civil service and the police force will be restructured to actually include black people. And the new military will have to integrate to include the MK and the APLA from the PAC guerrilla fighters, as well as the homeland armies, so they have to really mix up their new military to include the 90% black population. They're going to set up a new constitution, and it's going to be a 2-stage process to get there. So the interim constitution is drafted before the election during the negotiations, and then the final draft will be created by the first elected parliament. The elected members of this first parliament form the Constitutional Assembly. And so there were 400 members of the National Assembly, which is kind of like Congress, and 90 members of the Senate. And this will be chaired by Cyril Ramaphosa, one of the top leaders of the ANC and the unions. The Constitutional Assembly met for 2 years, from May of 1994 to May of 1996. And there were meetings and workshops held across the country to get input from all the different people so that we are truly democratic and we get the opinions of all South Africans. And there was a huge media campaign with commercials and advertisements to encourage people to send in their ideas, and they do. 1.7 million written submissions are made and sent in as far as what the people want in their new government. As far as what the final government looks like, it is a 2-house parliament. It is similar to an English-style government. They will have a National Assembly of 400 members, kind of like Congress, and a National Council of Provinces with 10 members from each province. And so it's kind of like the Senate. The state or provincial governments were given limited powers, but their decisions could be overridden by the National Assembly, and most of their funding came from the central government. So it's federalism, similar to America, where the states can pass laws, but the federal government can overturn those laws. The elections, the national elections, will be held by secret ballot every 5 years. Similar to ours. New parliament would elect a president as head of state, and the president is limited to 2 terms. So it's a little more complicated than our system in that they vote for a party, but they don't vote for a person. And so they vote for a political party, and the party themselves kind of choose who's going to be the head of the party. The amendments to the Constitution will require a 2/3 majority of a joint session of Parliament. So it's no easy thing to simply change the Constitution, but easier than some countries like America. The elections will use proportional representation based on lists of members from each party. And so it's not winner take all like in America. It's if 90% of the voters vote for this party, the party will get 90% of the seats. They don't necessarily get all the seats in that section. And so if you get 1% of the vote, you get 1% of the seats. So it's a bit more fair than the winner-take-all system that we have. And here we have the new symbol of their government. Final Constitution, millions of copies are sent out to the people so they understand their new government, their new rights. It's distributed in 11 languages. This includes a comprehensive Bill of Rights, a very impressive Bill of Rights compared to many other nations, that guarantees economic, civil, and political rights. And so things like access to housing, healthcare, water, and Social Security are included as basic rights. And so it's not too common to include things like housing as a basic right. So a very liberal Bill of Rights as compared to other nations. And it's largely based on the rights listed in the Freedom Charter 55, so they're taking a lot of their ideas from the ANC meetings earlier. Their court system, the Constitutional Court, is established to protect the Constitution, to make sure that if Parliament is passing a law that's unconstitutional, the court would get rid of that law. Same thing if the president or the government is acting and trying to do things in an unconstitutional manner, the court would take them down. Individuals or communities can also appeal to the courts if they believe their constitutional rights are threatened. And so there's been a few cases here and there where they've used this court. And so the first case overall ruled that the death penalty was unconstitutional. And so some of the early laws dealing with death penalty were struck down by the court. But there's also cases where people can go up to the court. And so it's similar to the American-style Supreme Court. In 1999, the court appealed that prisoners have the right to vote. We also got laws saying, or the Supreme Court saying, HIV-positive pregnant women must be given antiretroviral medicine to save the child. And so these are things that they're brought up by the people. The court, oh no, the light's out. Pause. And we're back. We also got a court case ordering Parliament to introduce legislation to legalize same-sex marriages. So there's been a few cases in recent years. Opposition parties. Opposition parties were allowed, but they're very small and fragmented. The ANC dominates, but there's all these other little parties that try to get their word in. The Government of National Unity broke up once the new constitution was approved. They didn't really need the old government anymore. So the National Party's out, and it goes off to die. Because as a minority party, they really had little influence on decisions. Even though they were second place, they were not even close, with only 10% of the vote. They later on intended to become kind of the opposition party in Parliament, but they really struggled after de Klerk left and other leaders resigned, and they just kind of fell apart. They tried to come back in 2000 as the new National Party, but even that didn't work out. The Democratic Party, however, becomes kind of the new, almost white opposition party. So a lot of former NP members join together to create the Democratic Alliance. And so it changes from Democratic Party to Democratic Alliance, but it's the same people. They didn't really get black voters, except in the Western Cape and KwaZulu-Natal, but overall they are the opposition party. And so you got all these other little parties here and there. So here's the Inkatha, here's the PAC, here's the Democratic Alliance, amongst a whole lot of others. But it's the ANC that dominates and likely will continue to dominate. The 1999 election, Mandela vowed, hey, he's only going to serve one term because, well, at this point he's an old man. And he did his job. And so Thabo Mbeki took over ANC leadership in 1997, and this ensured that he's going to be the next president because he's the party leader. As far as the election results, ANC leads with, and their lead increases to 66% of the vote. The closest rival is the Democratic Party with only 10% of the vote. As far as Mbeki and how good of a job he did, debatable. His government focuses on moving from reconciliation, from kind of forgiveness, to change. He wants transformation. And so he's not afraid to speak out in support of more black rights and less white rights necessarily. And so he speaks out against whites unwilling to give up power in this transition. And some whites see this attitude as hostile and racist against whites. His support for very capitalist policies alienates the communists, alienates the unions. So he's angering a lot of the people that aren't in the ANC. The Democrats, the unions, and the communists are not happy with him. But he has a clear majority. So he's very criticized for his intolerance of criticism and his centralization of power for the ANC. So it's just all ANC all the time for him. He appoints ANC leaders to key positions, so he's not really willing to work with others as Mandela was. He's also very criticized for his friendly policy with Robert Mugabe, who was the dictator of neighboring Zimbabwe. And so worldwide, people criticize Mugabe as a dictator, but he's their neighbor, and so he's willing to work with them. Also very much criticized for his response to the AIDS epidemic, and they feel that he didn't work hard enough on that. And that's it on South Africa at this point.